Hey folks, Bernie here, and in today's Co-working Values podcast, we got Chris Marr, who's brilliant at helping people stay calm and in control during client conversations. This is a short, sharp episode packed with tools for those "oh no" moments, like when a client blindsides you or when you're sparring after a really difficult call. And it's especially useful if you work in a co-working space, because so many of us who work in co-working spaces are freelancers, independent economic agents and consultants and juggling work. And there's a lot of isolation that's around, and you need to have somewhere to go or tools and techniques that get you back on track instead of having your whole day derailed. This is also something for community managers, because you're supporting those people I just talked about, the freelancers, the indie workers, and all those kind of members of your co-working space. And this is stuff in here that you can put your own spin on and then share it in your newsletters, design events from, and have member chats around the table when you're having lunch and stuff. So it's a conversation to help you do anything you do better that involves building relationships in a business context with people. And also, I say business context, but we want everyone to have great relationships. And also, before we get into the show, I want to draw your attention to the Unreasonable Connection link in the show notes, which is our online event for community managers and community builders to get together and talk about how to make those relationships I just talked about here. So let's get into the show. Hello, folks, and welcome to another Co-working Values podcast. And in the studio today is Chris Marr. We've got to be really quick, Chris, but Chris, welcome back. What are you known for, and what would you like to be known for this week?
Hey, Bernie. I am known for being an expert in client communication. Today, I would like to be known for helping you to overcome difficult client situations. I think that's what we're really focusing on.
That's definitely. So we were talking just before we came on air about, I was saying how in the nearly 15 years I've been sitting in co-working spaces, I have sat at my desk and made calls, and some of them have gone one way and some of them have gone another. And I've seen so many people hang up a call and go and walk around a co-working space looking really stressed out, crash a coffee mug around, and just like you and I do, like working in a small team or working on your own is lonely, isolating, and also it's like amazing and you're building your own thing. But there's a lot of like mental work that goes on there.
Right.
And when the point I made to you earlier was like, if it takes you 2 hours to get back on track, that's a long time when you're working on your own and you're your own independent economic agent. And then, like I said to you, I would get stressed about losing the time, and then it becomes this like death loop. So in the next 16 minutes, how do I get out of that, mate?
Yeah, you're like in your head about it, right? I think we've all been there where we go on a spiral, make a lot of assumptions. And I think a big part of that is about agency, right? You want to feel like you're in control, especially when it comes to your client work. You don't want to be guessing, right? You don't want to be sort of like, oh, I wonder where they're at. Are they getting value? Are they going to pay my bill? Or what just happened on, like, you don't want to be unclear. And I think we all want to get into a position where we have like influence, control, and respect, right? When we're working with our clients. Things do happen, right? You'll jump on a session with a client or a call with a client, and like they'll surprise you with something, right? It'll just come out of the blue and it'll completely throw you off. And what I think we should discuss today is this is not going to be like a light switch, but there's certainly going to be things today that are going to help you think differently or frame it differently so that it doesn't throw you off anymore. So that it doesn't put you on the back foot or on your heels when something goes wrong in these client circumstances. Do you think that would help today?
Definitely. And that like, something I've learned from you over the years is like setting things up is really important. So like an example is with Lee, who I work with in a job, that question, how is the pace? So I'd arrive to that going, oh, like, will he still talk to me? Because, all in my head. That's my in my head voice, ladies and gentlemen. Right. And now I say, Lee, how's how is the pace of this week? Is it going too fast or going too slow? And he's able to, it's a bit more of an intelligent question than, not intelligent, but like, predictable question, like on a scale of 1 to 10, it's like, mate, this is going way too slow. We need to do A, B, and C, and then we're back on track. And it all happens really fast and easy. Whereas I know that's just very clear, easy for me to ask and easy for him to answer. And it removes all that mystification that I think hangs around so many client relationships.
Yeah, I think you're tapping into something there, which we talked about, which is turning your assumptions into questions, right? So when you're a client-facing professional, which is like a coach, a consultant, whatever, a lot of those assumptions that you have start to spiral into anxiety and like a nervousness and a lack of confidence, right? And if you want to be in more control and you want to be ahead of it or lead that conversation, the trick is to move yourself from assumptions to questions, right? So if I'm assuming like, oh, I'm worried about we're going too slow. It's like, well, what's the question you need to ask? Like, be bold to ask the question, invite that potential tension into the relationship, because the more you leave it unsaid, the more you just worry about it. So can you just put that assumption and that worry to bed by asking the question? And maybe you are moving too fast, maybe it is moving too slow, but at least you now know and you can do something about it, right? So I think that's a real key to taking some of the heat out of this, like this worry and this nervousness about going into client sessions or worrying about the client relationship, is get on the front end of it, turn it into a question that you can bring into the conversation that confirms or disconfirms, but ultimately gives you information to help you understand better what you need to do about this thing, whatever that might be. Does that make sense?
It does.
I think this is the key. It's like, stop being like allowing yourself to be influenced by what other people are or aren't saying or doing, and get your agency back, which is, I need to control my thoughts and ideas, and then turn it into a question that you can ask. So if it's going too fast or too slow, what's the pace? How would you rate the pace? If you're worried about the value that you're bringing to your client, you could say, what do you feel like we've done well, or we're doing really well here, or what do you feel like has been an achievement for us? What do you feel like we dropped the ball on? Right? Best to know, like, who should be having this conversation? Do you want to be the one that's having the conversation, or do you want your client to bring it to you? Right? I know what I would rather have. I'd rather be the one that's inviting this conversation to happen, because then I'm in control of it. Then I can shape it.
So where do you see people, are there some obvious things that people don't do to get themselves in a pickle? Like something a bit beyond like just avoiding the question.
What are some things that people do to avoid them getting in a pickle?
Oh, I meant to say that the other way around. Sorry. Like, what do people do that gets them in this pickle?
Got it.
Yeah.
Well, I think number one is you've got to. I think we could probably. There's a broad brush here because there's quite a deep. It could be a potentially deep conversation, which is setting the relationship up for success is number one, right? We call it setting the conditions for success. So, what are the conversations that you need to have with a client before the work begins, right? And I think there's like one big question here is like, based on your experience, having worked with all the clients you've worked with, 3 to 6 months into the work that you're doing, what tends to go wrong? What's the friction that comes up? And it could be like they miss deadlines, or they skip sessions, or they don't do the work, or they start to question the value, or they're measuring ROI in the wrong way, or communication starts to slip. What are all those things that need to be really set the conditions? Like, how do we set the conditions for success? So in other words, can you develop very quickly an authoritative relationship with your client, so that when you do have difficult things to deal with, that the relationship is strong enough to actually deal with it? So for example, if you're nervous or anxious about bringing up difficult things or giving them feedback on poor performance or poor quality of work, what would it look like if you actually had permission to do that from the very beginning, right? So I would say to a client, what does our relationship need to look like for us to be successful? And a client will say things like, well, I really want you to challenge us on our ideas. I want you to point out the mistakes we're making. I'm like, fantastic. I'm going to do exactly that. And so when I do it, it's not a problem. It's expected. Does that make sense? It's like,
It
you've
does,
got to
yeah.
really set up, like, that's our job. We can't expect the client to do it, and we don't want to get lucky here. Like, be very deliberate about setting the conditions for success for the work that you're going to be doing with the client, and the relationship that needs to be, like, the conditions of the relationship for us to do our best work and be successful at our highest potential. That's one of the major pieces of work that we want to do with our clients, is just tackle these things from the beginning.
When I'm doing that well, I always say, like, it's much easier to be awkward now asking this than it is to be awkward 3 months down the line and everyone wondering about
Right.
how to bring it up, because it
Yes.
is choking when you get too far into it. And
Mm-hmm.
so many things are a yes or no at the beginning, and they're like a series of very time consuming awkward phone calls later on.
Right, it's like it's to your advantage if you do it in the, like, now. It's to your disadvantage if you leave it till later, right? So I think if you want it to be, if you want more control, more influence, then you would do it. You would be the one that would invite it. And I call this like leaning in, right? Just leaning into the process and taking ownership of it. There's a couple of stories that come to mind. One is, like, this has probably happened in many different ways for people, but I got on a call with a client thinking it was like a normal session, like a normal, I'm doing some consulting or some coaching with the client, just a normal session. And I get there, and then I was sort of like attacked by the VP of sales and the CEO of the company. I say attacked, that's obviously not what happened. There wasn't a physical altercation. We were in different countries for, they're not right in my front room, physically hurting me or anything like that. But it felt like I was on the back foot coming in, because they had had an internal discussion about the results they were getting from the work that we're doing, and they weren't happy, right? So I jump on to the session with them, which was on Zoom, and they immediately say, "Hey, Chris, we've been doing some, like, crunching some numbers and things like that, and we're not happy about the results that we're getting from the work that we're doing," right? So if we just pause there, okay, this happens. There's loads of different things that, like, just fill in the blank with the situation. The client says something they're not happy about. Oh, we've changed our mind about this, or we're not doing this anymore. We want to stop paying you. We think this is too expensive. Like, insert objection, insert, like, problem, right? The client's coming to you. Now, if we pause there, I just want to fill in the blank. Are you tracking the story so far, Bernie?
Yeah, I'm thinking like a big hole's opened up in the floor and I wanted it to swallow me as we're going through that situation.
Right. So yeah, you got to think. I think the challenge here is, like, how would you normally respond in a situation like this? And a lot of people would start to talk a lot and start to justify all the work we've done and try to almost, like, save the client. I don't want to lose the client. The client are telling me they want to leave. They're not telling you they want to leave. I'll tell you what they're telling you. They're telling you, "Hey, Chris, we found a problem, and we thought that you would be the right person to talk to it about." That's what's happening. Now, that's a mental framing, right? It's a different mental model to invite problems in. In other words, the energy that I want to bring to a problem that's come to me as a surprise is, thank God they're talking to me about this now, because I'm the best person to actually help solve it. Do you see what I'm saying?
Yeah,
So you
because
change the energy around it.
even just listening to that story, and
Mhm.
I've heard this before, is it just feels like it's all over. So I either want to let off a hand grenade to end it before they do,
Right.
or I mean, get really defensive. And now that's how I do it. I'd like not say anything and like break it down to in a very seek first to understand, then to be understood kind of situation.
Exactly.
But my visceral reaction is like absolute panic, even though I'm just listening to a story.
It's a threat. It feels like a threat, and the reason for that is because our ego gets in, like, invites our ego into it, right? They're like, we're attacking you, so now you get defensive, right? And we have to let go of trying to be right or trying to be the smartest person in the room. We have to step into this idea. Like, the whole idea here is, like, how do I move this moment forward? Like, how do I build on this? Now, the clients come to me, they've got a problem. I'm the best person to help fix it. So, and that's my job, or help at least work through it together. So you have to go into a different place, right? So this is the energy. So what we're talking about here, Bernie, is, like, step one is the right mental framing around situations like this. You don't, if you're caught off guard or you react in a very surprised way, you aren't going to be the best version of yourself to like create a container for a problem like this, right? So another simple version might be a client. I've had this before as well. A client will come to me and say, "Hey, Chris, we've decided that we're not going to talk about pricing on our website." Now, if you're from the Ask You Answer background, you'll know why that's such a big deal, because it's a massive part of the actual philosophy of the Ask You Answer, right? So your client comes in and they say something surprising. How you respond in that moment with the right energy, we call this a yes and energy. In other words, what you do is you take all the negative things, that, like the non yes and energy, or the opposite would be yeah but, and you just start arguing and debating about things, and the conversation is going nowhere, and you're just stuck. The alternative energy frame here is, how do I move the conversation forward? And that's that mental framing I'm talking about. It's like, I'm glad you're not going to say this out loud necessarily, but in your mind, you're like, I'm so glad they've come to me to talk about this now so that we can actually work on it together and figure out what we're going to do. So you're sort of inviting it in, and that energy should hopefully change. Like if you're thinking differently about it, my sense is that it will also change the way you behave around it. In other words, what you say next, which we can get into. So that's the first thing, is how do you turn negative energy into positive energy? How do you disarm the situation so that it's not a fight or a debate, but it becomes a really valuable, potentially transformative conversation for the client? That's the
So,
challenge.
so many situations like this I've been in where if you use extra energy to get to this point you're talking about, it becomes a like collaborative problem solving situation rather than a really weirdo
Exactly.
altercation. Like,
Can become
and
an argument easily.
yep.
And maybe you get the result that you wanted, but you got it there because you had to fight through it. But if you invite, like another part of this mental framing is, imagine you're sitting on the same side of the table as your client and you're all looking at the problem together, right? It's like think differently about it being them trying to fight you, and more like working together to fix the thing. So I think that helps as well, right? It's like, well, let's just get on the same side of the table here and figure this out together. And
As you're talking about this, sorry,
yeah,
there's this. It's just happened. All the freelancer meetups I've been in and everything. There's always this kind of David and Goliath vision of like, I'm the little person that's been hired by the company, and then we're the, there's like this, the client dominates everything, anything the client wants, and all the people who I've seen just be successful freelancers and consultants and independent economic agents are like, and I've had to learn this very hard myself, is going in at the same level and building that relationship as we're talking here is so important to your mental well-being and also the possibility of the project you're working on with those people.
right. They can't do it without you. That's why they've hired you, or that's why you're there. So, like, you have your own authority in the room. And so you absolutely want to, and it's another mental framing. And again, it's not a light switch per se, but it's like in terms of just switching it on. But you want to, I think this is where it comes back to that influence, control, and respect that we're trying to get to is, do I feel like a peer in any room? Like, so if you're like you said, like a small freelance, you're a freelance graphic designer, but you're working with the CEO of a multinational company, do you still feel like you have your own authority, your own unique authority? Do you feel like a peer? In other words, you're not a supplicant to the CEO because of their status. Is that what you're getting at?
Yeah. And who's the expertise guy? David.
David C. Baker.
Yeah, like great. We'll put a link in the show notes to that, because he out of all those How to Work Like That books, like him and Peter Block, I think are the
Right.
two guys. Can I ask a question that's just popped in my head that's so interesting I can't let it go?
Mm-hmm.
And I know we didn't prep for this, but there's so in this world of AI, I've had like 5 very detailed conversations with people who are probably listening to this podcast about, AI is coming taking my job, but there's a way to like position yourself even stronger than before, because you have this expertise, you have this way of setting everything up. So the more I would say, like, the more attention you pay to this stuff now, the better you're going to do in a AI dominated world. Does that? I'm trying not to say does that make sense, because I know I'm not supposed to say that,
Right.
but
So no, yeah, I think you're right. Yeah. I think we want to get like this is the stuff the client relationship in the dynamic between you and the client. That I mean, I don't think AI has a certain doesn't have human intelligence. Let's just say that, right? The
that's what I
AI
was
tools
going
that we're
for.
using today don't have human intelligence. They might help us get some jobs done faster. They might be able to use them as tools to like get there better even in some cases, but they're not going to replace like a human intelligence anytime soon, I don't think. That's maybe a separate podcast for a separate day.
It is. I'm being quiet because I've derailed our
Annoying questions.
conversation. Yeah.
Yeah,
So
let me
back.
finish this story though, because I think it's important to get to the end of this story, which is like the client comes to you with a surprise, right? They take you off guard, you're on the back foot. So what we've inserted in here is a couple of things, which is turning assumptions into questions, getting that yes and energy, and saying to yourself, like, okay, I'm actually this is a high stakes environment or a high stakes situation. It has come as a surprise, but how can I move the moment forward? How can I build upon this? How can I shift my energy so that I'm actually going to work with the client through the problem rather than try to justify it, or even like the thing is as well, if you do it right here, my sense is that we'll actually by the time it's done, you won't lose that 2 hours or that half day or that week just like sunk into the thinking about what happened and why it went so bad. And so I want to give you this like sense of agency and control that you can actually deal with situations like this quite easily. And if there is a framework for it. So if we add this in just now, I think it's important. So what happens is like say a client comes to you in this situation it's a surprise. They might say something like, oh, it's like this is too expensive, or your competitors are cheaper than us. Or they might say, oh, I don't know if we can do that or not, I'll need to speak to my business partner. Or I don't think we've got the right time for like the time to do something like this, or it's not the right time. Or they might say like anything at all, like they just as a what we would call like an objection or pushback or resistance to either an idea or a concept or even a program or a consulting program or whatever that might be. You with me so far? Like there's this situation where the client's bringing something to you that's pushback or resistance or creating friction. And this is, again, we're back to that yes and energy. How do you turn that negative energy into something positive? In other words, the technique here is to delegate it back to the client, right? How do you, when they come to you with something like this, how do you get them to answer the question? So the client comes to you and says, in the story that I shared, we're not getting the results that we hoped we would, Chris. Now, the people pleaser, the need to be liked, that person is going to be like, driven by the need to keep the peace. They're going to start to defend their work. They're going to start to over explain things. They might even fall on their sword. They might be like, oh, I'm really sorry that you're not getting the results so far. Oh, let's try more. Let's do better. Blah, blah, blah. We'll take it on. It's all our fault. All of that sort of stuff. It's all very people pleasy, need to be liked. Please don't stop spending money with us. We panic and all the rest of it. And what ends up happening is it's just like not a good response and we end up losing the client anyway, right? And so what's the opposite of that is what we're getting to, right? How do we deal with that? And so what I want to introduce you to is this concept called the pushback pivot. In other words, how do you pivot that pushback back onto the client? Okay. And so you take that yes and energy we talked about and you use a question. So the energy is important, right? It's like, oh, right. Thanks for sharing that with me. What kind of results are we actually talking about here? Right. Or, oh, thanks for sharing that with me. So we're worried about the results. Great. So what kind of results have we been looking at? Tell me more. Right. In other words, what we're doing here is like we are completely disarming the situation by getting the client to actually answer the question that they've just asked me. Right. We're not getting results. We're unhappy. Great. Tell me more about the results. Why are you unhappy? What is it that do you understand what I'm saying? It's like you're taking it, they're shooting it towards you, and you're taking it and you're putting it back on them, and they have to address it, which ultimately disarms the whole situation and moves the conversation forward.
And they're
So,
probably
mhm,
expecting a confrontation. So when you
right.
don't have a confrontation and you say, like, help me understand what you mean, it's like a snow globe and everything settles and you can clearly see what's possible.
Right. So they say something like, we're not going to put pricing on our website. And you say, oh, you're not going to put pricing on your website. What's changed? Or they say, you're too expensive. And you say, oh, we're too expensive. What makes you say that? Or what makes you feel that way? Like, it's back to them. Don't, like, this is the situations where we diminish our authority because we just get into over explainer mode. We start to just try and justify everything. It's a lot of energy going in the wrong direction. In fact, it's arguably going nowhere. And so with this particular story, the way that I handled the client that says we aren't getting the results, I say something like, well, when you say results specifically, help me out. What do you mean by that? And where were you actually hoping to be by now? And how long have you noticed this? Like, how long have you been like worried about this? Why am I only finding out now? And what do you feel like we've missed? I'm not protecting any, like, this is not about me. I'm not protecting my end, my work. I've not got like a, like my, like, I want the client to be successful. And right now we're not where they want to be. And I need to figure out, are we even looking at the right problem? Are we even talking about the right thing? Like, if they had an internal discussion about it, I wasn't there. So I need to have answers to these questions. So this, in summary, what we're doing here is that we're inviting the problem in. We're we're using this yes and energy to move the moment, to build upon it, and we're using what we call the pushback pivot to take it back to the client. We're using that energy. We're going to repeat. We smile. We use the right energy. We say in our head, "Thanks for bringing this problem to me. I'm the right person to speak to about it." We're going to repeat it back to them and ask a question. Right? That's the framework. Right? Energy, repeat, question leads to disarming. Right? And that's what it's all about. We want to get disarmament so that we're not fighting and that we're actually moving towards something. We're moving towards a solution. We're moving towards a fix. And so when you're in situations like this with clients, you might feel like there's a flinch moment, like you're being put on your heels. But how can you quickly get back on the balls of your feet? By using this framework, by using these ideas, by using this right type of energy to lean in, get on the balls of your feet and like physically lean in, and then ask a question that gets them to actually respond to their challenge.
And this is, I'd hate for people to be listening to this and go, "This is how I save every client situation ever." Because, like, we've been in a situation where we've ended it with a client because it just wasn't the right energy going forward, and it's much easier to use, I don't know, this kind of technique to work out where to go next, not just to
Right.
rescue the situation. That's what I'm feeling.
Yeah, we need to get, this is the magic is in the moment you can do it very quickly. So if like, so for example, someone says you're too expensive, I go, oh, too expensive, what makes you say that? And it's just like, literally, we're talking about like a a 2 or 3 second window where the whole energy just changes in a moment. It's like a magic trick to like disarming people and moving conversations forward. And the change in your authority, your confidence, your ability to handle difficult situations, and your ability to just move conversations forward. And also, like, your clients get like a really good sense that when they have difficult things to talk about, they actually feel good about coming to you with them because you bring the right type of approach to that conversation. Right? They're not thinking, oh God, I need to go and speak to Chris again about, I'm not happy about something, but he's going to absolutely flip out about it. Like, they're not thinking that. They're thinking, actually, I should go and speak to Chris about this because he'll help us figure it out.
Yeah, keeping ahead. I mean, it sounds almost cliche, but like keeping ahead of client relationships is way better energy than like trying to salvage it in the end. And I
Right.
found just doing that gives me more headspace. And I wish I'd known this, years ago, because I spent so much time sitting around guessing when I could have just asked.
Right. This is actually like a major theme. It comes up weekly in my work with my clients, which they come to me with and I invite people to complain about their clients with me, because this is where you should do it. You should talk about the challenges you're having with your clients. But generally speaking, the advice always ends up in one place, which is you're on the back foot right now and you're not ahead. Like you're allowing them to kind of dictate what's happening, and you're not ahead of it. So almost always the advice is, right, okay, let's slow down, figure out what needs to change, and how do you then become the lead in this? How do you be the one that sort of controls the conversation, or at least dictates the way forward? That's almost always the case, that we're too supplicant to our clients, and we're letting them invite us into their chaos, or we're letting them dictate the terms or the plan or the way forward, and we're just along for the ride. Instead, what I'm saying is, we need to actually be the ones that are many steps ahead of our clients. That's oftentimes really what we end up talking about.
Yeah, invite them into your chaos. I know what you mean.
Oh, I could go on about that for days.
So, where can we find you online? What's good on your website at the moment? And what's the best social media platform to track you on nowadays?
Yeah, there's a couple of things, because obviously we've tapped into 2 or 3 key ideas here, right? We've got this idea of assumptions into questions. We've got this idea of the yes and energy. We talked about the pushback pivot methods, but these all come from foundational principles that have multiple frameworks around them. So you're really getting a snippet into one small part of the whole work that we do. And so if you want to find out more, the best place is Instagram at The Authoritative Coach, where you'll see all my recent content there. But if you really want to dig into this, there's 2 things on my website at the moment, which is the 25th of April. There's a workshop called the Client Success Playbook, which takes you through the 16 conversations that every client-facing professional needs to have with their clients before they start the work. And then I've got another cool workshop, which is called Authority Under Pressure, which is somewhat what we've been talking about today. It's how do you maintain your authority in high-stakes situations, or when the pressure's on? Because that's ultimately when we find out how good we actually are, right? We can all be great, fair-weather communicators, but when the pressure's on, can we hold it together? Oftentimes, that's not the case. So what you got a snippet in today was how to maintain your authority under pressure. I've got a workshop exactly on that as well, on that topic, and that's all at theauthoritavecoach.com.
Link in the show notes, folks. So, ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much for your time and attention today. And if you go to our show notes, there's how to connect with Chris, how to follow Chris. I've been working with Chris in different ways and workshops for nearly a decade now, because I saw Mike Russell's post from 11 years ago at the podcast meetup in Birmingham, and I thought that is a long time ago, isn't it?
Right, I had a lot of nostalgic thoughts came up for me seeing that picture.
I remember you walking into the room, you had this, everyone else is looking business casual when you turn up with a Megadeth t-shirt or something on.
Is that right? I don't remember that.
And I was like, yes! And you had long hair then. So I'll put that in as well, because there's a lot of people in there, and it's been great to see how that group of people has developed over the years. And a lot of those folks at that meetup are in Mark Masters' You Are the Media thing, which is another podcast we've done here. So in the show notes, folks, also at the time of recording this, it's European Co-working Day, and that is where you can do an open doors co-working session for your neighborhood. It's it's like a collective effort across Europe to raise public awareness of the perks and benefits and community around co-working. And as ever, there's the gigantic LinkedIn co-working group on LinkedIn. So wherever you are in the world today, be careful out there. It is a jungle. Say goodbye, Chris.
Bye-bye.